Hershey is.
Real milk chocolate, I love that Hershey bar.
Hershey is.
That's something special no matter where you are.
Anytime you want delicious chocolate, there's no need to go looking very hard.
Hershey's great!
'Cause Hershey is the great American chocolate bar.
The town of Hershey was founded by Milton S. Hershey, a philanthropist, businessman born and raised in Derry Township, Pennsylvania. Milton was raised in a strict Mennonite household and started his career in the candy industry in the late 1800s making caramel candies. After 2 failed attempts in Chicago and New York, Hershey set up his first candy business in Philadelphia. Hershey eventually returned to Lancaster and set up a small shop in 1883. By 1900, Milton S. Hershey had discovered his fascination for chocolate after attending the World's Columbian Exposition and viewing German chocolate-making machinery. Hershey sold the Lancaster Caramel Company for $1 million in 1900. After 3 years of experimenting, Hershey perfected his milk chocolate recipe. From 1903 to 1905, Milton S. Hershey built the largest chocolate manufacturing plant in the entire world. Milton Hershey was not your regular, greedy business person blinded by dollar signs. Mr. Hershey, as people still refer to him today, was a community-oriented person and very much a humanitarian. Hershey's vision was not only to make chocolate and open a factory where people wanted to work, not just have to, but to also develop a hometown with tree-lined streets, brick homes, and manicured lawns. Hershey wanted his employees to have a nice place to live, work, and play. He opened the park with amusement rides in 1907 using company profits. Since its opening, Hershey Park has expanded every few years to carry on Milton's legacy. For decades and decades, the people of Hershey and all the Hershey employees were happy, and the town, built on a corporation, seemed to be a utopian dream thought up by Milton himself. Between 1930 and 1936, Milton Hershey, who continued to build up the town of Hershey, reduced wages and stopped paying annual bonuses. He seemed to become more and more detached from his factory workers as he aged. In 1937, the Congress of Industrial Organizations, or the CIO, who was already expanding, began looking for new organizations to unionize. They turned their sights on Hershey, whose powerful friends in Detroit and other large industrial corporations had already fallen victim to unionization. The combination of a group of unhappy employees and Milton's alliances made Hershey Company a prime target for unionization by the CIO. In January 1937, the CIO began holding meetings with about 800 of the Hershey workers, discussing low pay and poor work condition. The factory was hot and loud. The union approached Milton and was met with a cooperative attitude, and wages were immediately increased. Shortly after the negotiation and wage increase, Hershey laid off many of the union organizers, claiming seasonal cutbacks. The CIO, led by Russell Bayman, saw the layoffs as an act of aggression and decided a strike was necessary. Initially, during the strike, workers smiled for pictures and even continued to maintain and lubricate the machinery so that there was no damage while they observed the work stoppage. Strikers were quoted describing the strike as a family squabble. At the time of the strike, the union did not deal with Milton, who was attending meetings with the U.S. Army regarding the ration candy bar concept. Instead, the union was dealing with Hershey's right-hand man, Executive William Murray, who was very anti-union. Murray refused to meet with the union until they vacated the factory. As a part of the milk chocolate production, Hershey purchased milk from the dairy farmers in the surrounding area. During the sit-down strike, the milk farmers began to feel the impact. After a meeting between the union and the milk farmers, the strikers agreed to continue to operate the creamery so that the farmers would not feel the impact of the strike. The next day, the representatives from the union did not pick up the milk from the farms. On April 6, 1937, Hershey loyalists, including townspeople, Hershey employees who refused to join the union, and farmers, marched in the streets of Hershey, protesting the union in favor of the Hershey Company. On the morning of April 7th, 3,000 Hershey supporters collected with bats and clubs to forcibly remove the union and strikers from the factory. As the Loyalists outnumbered the strikers 4-1, many of the union members were injured. Union leaders Michael Sweeney, Russell Bayman, and John Loy were severely injured. Loy lost several teeth in the beating. Outside of the factory, the union members, including union leaders, were funneled into a gauntlet where the beatings continued. The Loyalists sung the national anthem outside of the factory. Eventually, the police intervened. The governor blamed everyone involved and called for an immediate end to the violence. Hershey, who lived in a modest 2-bedroom house on a hilltop across from the factory, watched through their window and is rumored to have cried during the events. The aftermath of the strike included medical attention for the wounded and National Labor Relations Board intervention. The NLRB conducted an investigation and demanded that Hershey hold a union election. Eventually, by 1939, the Bakery and Confectionery Workers International Union, under the AFL, was recognized and reached a contract with the Hershey Company. Milton Hershey was never the same after the strike. Hershey was quoted saying that he was deeply troubled by the fact that the co-workers battled each other and that the innocence that once surrounded the town was lost. Never could someone imagine that this much history is behind their Hershey chocolate bar, Reese's peanut butter cup, or Hershey's Kiss.